Hi, this is Rob. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, It's Always Something. The something in today's video is going to be the fuel gauge system on my 2001 BMW Z3. You see it in the background behind me. I bought this car a little bit more than a year ago. One of the first things I did after getting the car was I filled it up with gas, put the top down, and took it out for a nice long ride on a weekend. I reset my trip odometer, and 100 miles into my trip, I looked down at my fuel gauge and I'm at 3/4 of a tank, and I'm thinking to myself, hey, this is cool. I'm going to get like 400 miles out of a tank full of gas in this car. Another 100 miles goes by. I'm 200 miles into my trip odometer. I'm at half a tank. This is great. About an hour later, I look down and I'm on empty. It's like the red warning light, get gas now light, that thing's on. And I'm freaking out. I'm thinking, man, this has got to be a really crappy fuel system. There's something wrong with the transmitter. Something's up with this thing. So what I've learned over the last year is I've learned a few things about this fuel gauging system on this Z3. And I'm not the only one that's had questions about this. I see people post in the BMW forums questions about, how's my gas gauge supposed to work on my Z3? Well, this is my experience with the gas gauge on my car. With my gas tank full, you can see my needle actually reads above the full mark. My technique for filling my vehicles is to hold down the lever on the nozzle until it clicks, pull it a second time until it clicks, and at that point I stop. I've reset my trip odometer for this mileage check. 37 miles in and my fuel gauge has not moved off the full mark that it was on when I filled my tank. I'm 75 miles into my drive right now, and you can see my fuel gauge is finally pointing at the full mark. This is about 3 gallons of gas that I've burned since I filled the tank up. I'm 100 miles into my drive and my gas gauge is reading 3/4 of a tank. At 200 miles, I'm reading a half a tank. This is par for the course. 100 miles in, 3/4 of a tank. 200 miles in, a half a tank. And you would think at this point here, well, you're going to get another 100 miles before it gets to 1/4 of a tank, and you could probably go 400 miles before it's empty. But watch what happens next once it gets below a half a tank. Okay, 20 miles later, I'm just a little bit below a half a tank, and you think, well, that's not bad. 38 miles beyond half a tank. Man, it's looking like it's going to get 300 miles when it hits that 1/4 mark. Okay, 243. That's not looking too bad. 250. Wait a minute, what's going on now at this point? That's getting close to a 1/4 of a tank. 275. Well, that's close to 300 at a 1/4 of a tank, right? Wait a minute, what just happened? I just went 6 more miles and I'm at 1/8 of a tank all of a sudden? What the hell? What? I got the red get fuel light on? I've only gone 86 miles since a half a tank. What the heck is going on with this car? What? My gas is on empty right now? I've only gone 93 miles since it was at half a tank? This ain't right. I pull into a gas station, fill back up with some 93 octane. You can see I've gone 293 miles and burned 11.7 gallons of gas. So at about 300 miles, I had about 2 gallons left in my tank, which means I could have gone maybe another 50 miles, but I wasn't going to try to push it. This is right out the owner's manual, and it shows that I have a 13.5 gallon tank. So why does the gas tank go so quick after half a tank? I took a picture off of eBay. A guy was selling a gas tank out of a BMW Z3, and it's laying down on a white cloth, and what we're looking at in the front of this is the front side of the tank. You can see the fillers on the left, which is the passenger side. And I circled the lowest area in the tank, and you can see this isn't uniform shape. So what happens is when the gas starts getting below that level where the big opening is in the middle, it starts going quick. This is a picture of the tank looking up from the bottom. You can see how wide the tank is from front to back from this view. And you can also see how narrow the lowest part of the tank is from this view, the part that's circled in red. I think when I'm driving my car during the first 200 miles, my fuel level is in the very wide part of the tank. Then around half a tank, what happens is my fuel level starts dipping into that little narrowed part of the tank that's circled in red. And that is why from half a tank to empty, my fuel gauge goes so quick. This little slide is a summary of the fuel gauge markings versus the actual miles I've traveled in my Z3. You can see that when the tank is full, the indicator is actually above the full mark. I'm 75 miles in, it's at the full mark. 100 miles in, at the 3/4 mark. 200, I'm at the half. And then from the half on down to the red light and empty, it goes quick. This is how I think the fuel gauge on my Z3 should actually be marked. And this is how I think of it when I'm driving in the car. I don't think of 3/4 as 3/4. I think of it as 2/3 of a tank. Half's not a half, half is a third. And when it gets down to the quarter tank mark, I consider that 1/6 of a tank. And about that point there, that's when I start looking around for a gas station. Well, there you have it, guys. I've explained why my gas gauge acts the way that it does. Is really not a problem with the transmitter or the gauge. It's the shape of the tank that affects how the rate at which the gauge goes from full to empty. And I'm pretty sure there's other people out there who have similar issues with their gauges, and this video helps them understand what's actually going on in the tank and why the gauge behaves the way that it does. So thanks for watching. Take care.